This week we're finally getting the first episode of The Mandalorian Season 2, and that obviously presented a fun excuse for me to draw some Mandalorian-focused stuff on the channel. And that's particularly exciting because about a year ago was the first time I ever drew a Mandalorian, and it was for an episode on this channel. Or, I guess he wasn't a Mandalorian, he was someone who hunted Mandalorians, but he had a helmet and was very Mandalorian-inspired. So sort of spinning off from that idea, I thought it would be fun to take some other popular Marvel characters and redesign them if they were Mandalorians. And as usual, paired with that, I've written a little bit of lore around these legendary Marvel Mandos. Also, I may have subconsciously stolen this idea from New York Art, who a while back did an Iron Man Mandalorian mashup. It's super cool, make sure to check out New York's Instagram, linked in the description below. But anyway, let's just jump right in because I'm super excited for y'all to see the artwork. I've already done it, and honestly, I'm so happy with how it turned out. I feel like I'm on a roll with my last two videos. As always, if you hit the like button, that's super helpful because of YouTube algorithm stuff, and I'm feeling cocky enough to say in advance that if you're not subscribed, you're gonna want to subscribe. This is gonna be that kind of video that makes you go like, ooh, I should be subscribed to this art channel. This is a cool art channel. But anyway, for now, Mandos. Mandalorians are a legendary clan of warriors and bounty hunters with many tales told of their exploits. Some of these stories are true, some exaggerated, and some lies, but gather around a group discussing them at a cantina and you're sure to hear some incredible lore on these beings. Here are some of the tales that have been told. One woman tells of a Mandalorian she encountered on Batuu, who was hunting down a man smuggling an illegal parasite that could greatly enhance his strength and speed to a dangerous degree. This Mando was clad in a vibrant red armor, but carried no weapons. Though she only briefly caught a glimpse of him in action, he seemed to fight predominantly with his fists and feet, with incredible agility. Aside from his Beskar armor, his only assist in combat were two grappling hooks, one mounted on each forearm, that he used to gracefully swing and fling himself around the trees. In combat, she said he acted as though he could see into the future and determine his opponent's moves before they made them. A blow was never landed on the Mando, and he finished his duel without a scratch. To the onwatching crowd, the Mando gave a sarcastic bow as he completed his task, something that, to the woman, seemed uncharacteristic of what she knew of Mandalorian culture, which admittedly was very little. But like that, he was just gone, and all she was left with was the hazy memories of the bizarre encounter. Now, our Spider-Mando here is the character that I thought of that is the reason I wanted to make this video. I just thought it would make a really cool combination. Shooting a grappling hook, I had a pose in my head that is pretty much what I ended up going with. And for this one, I really wanted to work with a color combination that has been really growing on me lately as one of my favorites, which is red character, green background. I mean, obviously they're contrasting or complementary colors, so they work really well together, and I do a lot of pairings based on complementary colors for a lot of my characters versus backgrounds. But the first time I really noticed myself loving this combination was when I did that ultimate character design video inspired by Jazza, which, by the way, he recently commented on that video and kind of made me freak out. That was super exciting. But anyway, for one of the drawings in that, I used red character, stark green background, and I just really loved how that turned out, and I wanted to try it on this again. I was also once more testing out something that I tried in my last video, the Venomized classic horror movie characters, where I have a big moon in behind the character, helping us draw our attention straight onto the character's head, upper torso kind of area. And it really worked out well again, I'd say. I love this drawing. I'll try to not overuse that trope in my work going forward, but I probably will end up using it a bunch. Anyway, I hope y'all like our Spider-Mando. Here he is. Another tale told was by that of a man who claimed to be hiking the deserts of Florum when he came across the scene of a Mandalorian being chased down by a small but well-armed ship. The Mandalorian was ducking in and out of dust clouds as he ran up a mountain like a tauntaun. The ship fired upon him, but he leapt and rolled out of the way, consistently avoiding fire. He got higher and higher until he came to a stop near the top. The ship got close and began blasting a barrage of fire onto the Mando, but instead of dodging this time, he activated a surprisingly large personal combat shield on his arm, blocking all the incoming fire. Despite the mass of assault, the Mando held his ground without falter. The ship pulled in closer, and that was when the Mando finally retaliated. He leapt inhumanly far from the mountain and dug his shield into the ship, then using that to fling himself on top of it. He then used the shield again, but like a Jedi's lightsaber, to slash through the ship's rockets. The whole thing started to spin and spiral, and the battle vanished into a dust cloud out of the man's view. But after a moment of waiting, the Mando emerged from the dust, unharmed, and dragging behind him the ship's purple-masked pilot. The man simply watched as the Mandalorian walked off through the desert, unhindered by the weight of dragging a full-grown man behind him. Now with Captain America, I had two main ideas going in. For one, I knew I wanted to have this Captain America Mandalorian blocking some kind of incoming fire, and I decided to have it coming from a ship just because I wanted him aiming up a little bit. And then the other thing that's kind of a smaller thing is I wanted the A on Captain America's forehead to be in the shape of the Mandalorian font, so basically just without having the little cross through it that an A usually has. And my favorite part of this one ends up being the mask with the lighting coming from the shield. I think it just looks really nice, it's very simple, and I'm actually surprised how much I like how the masks turn out in this one, because a lot of the time when I'm drawing my characters, I try to make their eyes very bright, brighter than they actually would be, because I want us to really draw attention in on the character's face and eyes to connect with them. Mandalorian masks, the glass part that they see through is usually very dark to the point of often just being black. And I knew I wanted to stick with that for this, with maybe a little bit of light thrown in there at some parts, but I wasn't sure how that'd turn out in my style, and I end up really loving it. And of course, I hope you all agree. Here's our Captain America Mandalorian. I think an ad's about to start playing, but maybe we can ward it off with the Force. I don't think that worked, did it? Maybe it did. Sorry if it didn't. Anyway, back into the artwork, right? Seemingly trying to one-up the previous man's tale, a moisture farmer from Tatooine told of a Mandalorian she'd seen come through her area who seemed completely unkillable. He was clad in yellow armor that looked unusually bright for a Mandalorian. That, paired with his very short stature, meant that the man didn't seem particularly intimidating. That is, until she saw him in action. Seemingly tracking his prey with no help from equipment, the man headed off into the desert. Curiously, the woman followed him from afar to a Tusken Raider camp. When she saw them, she immediately debated fleeing home, and to this day, she still somewhat wished she had, because the following scene was brutal. The Mandalorian tore through dozens, hundreds even, of the Raiders, using 2 sets of blades that sprung from the armor on his forearms. He took fire and blows over and over, as if totally unfazed by them. Many of the impacts did hit his armor, but she could have sworn that some were hitting his unpadded areas, and he was still moving as if totally unharmed. After what felt like hours to the woman, the only living being in sight was the Mandalorian. He retracted his blades and marched into a tent. Out of it, he carried a small boy, one that the woman recognized as having been on missing posters back in town. And while she was glad to see the boy rescued, she always wondered after that if it was worth the incredible violence and monstrosity enacted on that fateful day by the most violent being she'd ever witnessed. Now, when I thought about doing Wolverine, I was super excited, and that actually kind of changed this video from being an Avengers-focused episode to just Marvel heroes in general. I haven't done a ton of stuff with Wolverine. I turned him into a dragon in one of my older dragon videos, though it's not one of my favorite dragons I've drawn, so this is probably my favorite thing I've done of Wolverine on the channel so far. I wanted to make sure to do the stockier, shorter version of Wolverine. I know a lot of people are most familiar with the Hugh Jackman portrayal of him, but anyone who knows the comic book version knows he's generally a lot shorter and stockier and really scrappy. Of course, that does come across in the Hugh Jackman version, and that's something I wanted to do in this, make sure he looked scrappier, so adding more dust and injury, or not injuries, but kind of bullet wounds and scratches along his armor. I probably could have added even more, but overall I'm very happy with how this one ends up coming together. I was taking a bit of inspiration from an old run of Wolverine I read with art by Ryan Stegman. It was one where I think Wolverine couldn't use his claws anymore, so had armor that extra claws came out of. I'm vaguely remembering this, but if someone remembers what that's called, you can leave a comment below. Awesome art in that series, though. And now this art's almost wrapped up, so I hope you like our Wolverine Mandalorian. The final story came from a geologist who'd been on a research expedition on Mustafar, in a region that he never thought he would have seen another living soul. But to his dismay, he ended up finding himself in the middle of a violent duel between a Mandalorian clad in red and black armor facing off against another with what resembled a Mandalorian helmet, but the rest of their attire and weaponry seemed cobbled together with a variety of other cultures and groups' weapons. The man had a shield like the one described in a previous story. He had a blade that was all black but seemed to emit a white light. He had a series of blasters, and most unusually, he wielded a lightsaber. But he certainly was not a Jedi. And despite this litany of incredible weaponry, the Mandalorian was perfectly holding her own against the man. But the longer they fought, the more the geologist watching on started to see that the Mando's opponent was starting to adapt her own attacks against her. Soon, he was blocking every single blow she threw at him, but he was laying blow after blow on her unarmored areas. Just as she was looking to be on her last legs, the Mando leapt back and thrust her arm forward. From one of her gauntlets sprung a glowing barrage of whistling red bullets. They spiraled through the air towards her opponent, who leapt and twirled between them all. But as he spun and dodged, he was too distracted to see her running up to him. She leapt through the fire and shoved him off the side of a cliff that they were fighting near. He tumbled towards the smog and flowing magma below. The geologist certainly would have thought that this would be the end of him, but seemingly unsure, the Mandalorian leapt and slid down the side of the mountain after her prey. The geologist never saw her again. Now before I'd started, I considered using Storm for this next one. I'd also considered Scarlet Witch, but she's kind of my go-to with Marvel female characters, so I was like, alright, let's do Black Widow. I'll probably do something WandaVision focused in the near future anyway, because that show's also coming out. And I'm glad I went with Black Widow. I mean, in terms of abilities, I didn't really have to adapt anything. Throw some Mandalorian armor on her and she could basically just be a Mandalorian. I mean, that's a simplification, but you get what I mean. I also really like the idea, because Black Widow has those, I don't even know how to describe her wrist things, but with all the little pipes and tubes on them, it immediately reminded me of the whistling birds from The Mandalorian, so I was like, I gotta have Black Widow shooting those things off. It's kind of fun having them come a bit towards us, but they also visually lead us back towards our main character. Like all the other drawings in this video, I'm very happy with how this turned out, so I hope you all like it as well. Here's our Black Widow Mandalorian. Well, that's Marvel Mandalorians all wrapped up. Or at least the first episode of it. Should I do another round of this? Or should I take characters from something else and make them Mandalorians, like DC characters or My Hero Academia characters? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're new to the channel and want to check out some other Marvel-focused stuff, I've done lots of stuff with Marvel characters. Most popularly is probably the ones where I turn Avengers or X-Men characters or whatever into dragons. But then of course there's also the Spider-Man characters and the Star Wars universe videos. And as I said, lots of other Marvel stuff. I just don't want to overwhelm you with a bunch of suggestions. But anyway, everybody, that's all for today. Thanks so much for watching. Get excited for Friday's episode, which is this month's community redraw, / not a full redraw, I'm coloring people's stuff. Submissions are now closed, so you can't submit anymore, but I do submission redraw kinds of episodes once a month. The next one will be announced in Friday's episode. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all then. Goodbye.